Hello everyone. I hope that all of you will be fine. Students, this video is related to manufacturing account. In this video, you are going to learn the basic concepts related to accounts of manufacturing business. So let's start. First of all, let's go through the objectives of this video. The first thing which we are going to learn is that we will learn about manufacturing business. We will define manufacturing business, manufacturing account, and cost of product. I will assume that you do not have any previous knowledge about accounts of manufacturing business. So we'll start from basics. We'll first define manufacturing business, manufacturing account, and cost of product. After that, we will see elements of cost and we'll see that what is included in elements of cost and the detail of elements of the cost. And the third, we will see the basic presentation of manufacturing account. So let's start. Okay, so we have three types of organizations. We have trading organization, we have manufacturing organization, and we have service organization. In trading organization, we buy goods and we sell it to the customer at a higher price and we earn profit from that. So we are not actually manufacturing goods, we are buying it from outside and we are selling to the customer at higher price and we earn profit from that. So trading is basically concerned with buying and selling of finished goods. The second one is manufacturing organization. In manufacturing organization or manufacturing business, instead of buying it from outside, you manufacture your goods and you sell it to the customer. So it is the main difference between the manufacturing and the trading organization is that in manufacturing organization, we are manufacturing goods, and in trading organization, we are buying it from outside and then selling to the customer. So in manufacturing, we are manufacturing and selling the finished goods. Then third, we have service organizations. The service organizations, they are different from trading and manufacturing in the sense that service organizations, they normally do not provide any product, they provide services. So a service organization is basically concerned with provision of services. So these are the three types of organization: trading, manufacturing, and service organizations. Over here, we are concerned with manufacturing organizations because the accounts of manufacturing business is connected to a manufacturing organization. Okay, now we'll see the definition for manufacturing business, manufacturing account, and cost of product. So as we have defined manufacturing business, that a business which manufactures goods, and how you manufacture goods, you take components or material from the market and then you produce a product and you sell it to the customer to earn profit. That is basically a manufacturing business. So a manufacturing business is any business that uses components, parts, or raw materials to make a finished good. Then we'll see what is manufacturing account. As I told you, that in trading organizations, you are not manufacturing products, you are buying it from outside. So it is not difficult to calculate the cost of the product because the purchase price which you have paid for the product or the expenses which you have incurred to bring that product, that is basically the cost of the product. So it's very easy to calculate the cost of the product in a trading organization. But in case of manufacturing organization, you cannot calculate cost directly because you are manufacturing yourself. You're not buying it from outside. So you have to find out a way in which you can calculate the cost of the product. So we need an account or we need a statement through which we can calculate the cost of the product. So manufacturing account is basically that account which helps us to find the cost of the product. It accumulates all the cost of the product and we get the cost of the product which we can charge after adding profit we can charge to the customer. So in manufacturing account, the manufacturing account is an account which is used to accumulate all the manufacturing costs of goods completed by a business during an accounting period. The third one we have is cost. So we can define cost as the amount of resources which we have sacrificed for the production of goods. That is basically the cost of the good. For example, if we are making a wooden chair, we will use wood in that wooden chair. So basically the amount of resource, the amount of wood which we have sacrificed. For example, we have used 2 kg of the wood and 1 kg costs us $2. So 2 into 2, $4. That is basically the amount of resource which we are sacrificing for the production of that chair. So that will be included in the cost. So the cost is basically the amount of resources which we have sacrificed for the production of goods. So we have learned three definitions over here: manufacturing business, manufacturing account, and cost. Manufacturing business, as I told you, it uses components, parts, or raw materials to make finished product. Manufacturing account is used to accumulate all the manufacturing cost of goods completed by a business during an accounting period, and the cost is the amount of resources which we have sacrificed for the production of good. Now we'll see this cost in detail, and we'll see that what is meant by elements of cost. We have three elements of cost. The first one is material, then we have labor, and then we have expenses. So these are the three elements of the cost. So let's see what is meant by material. There is a misconception, and the students they think that the material consists of only raw material. Actually, it's not true, because material can be raw material, it can be a semi-processed material, or it can be a finished product as well, which is used as a material. For example, if you are manufacturing a chair, the wood can be an example of raw material. But if you are manufacturing a car, the glass can be an example of semi-processed material, which is used, semi-processed material, which is used in manufacturing of car. Then third one, if we use batteries in the car, now batteries, they are not the raw material, they are the finished product for another business. So that is also considered as a material when you are manufacturing car. So material is not only the raw material, it can be semi-processed, it can be finished product as well. So how we are going to define material? In accounting, we say that anything which is used as an input in the manufacturing process, that is known as material. Now, it does not matter it's a raw material, or it's a semi-processed material, or it's a finished product. If it is used as an input for the manufacturing process, that will be considered as material. So we can say anything which is used as an input, that is known as material. It can be raw material, semi-processed material, or finished product of any other business. For example, wood is an example of raw material. Glass used in a car is an example of semi-processed material. Batteries used in a car are an example of finished product of another manufacturing business. Now the second one we have is labor. Now over here in labor, the students they think that the physical efforts that is considered as labor. But remember, all human mental and physical efforts, both they are considered as labor. So the labor who is putting physical effort, and at the same time the labor who is putting a mental effort, that is also the person who is putting a mental effort, that is also considered as labor. So all human mental and physical effort used in creation of goods and services, that will be considered as labor. Third one, we have expenses. We incur expenses basically to generate revenues. They are more operational in nature. Or for example, we use a building for the whole month, and at the end of the month we have to pay the rent of the building. So rent is basically an expense. Or we use electricity for the whole month. At the end of the month we have to pay an electricity bill. So electricity bill is an expense. So expenses are incurred to generate revenues, or the cost is incurred to generate revenue. For example, rent or electricity. So we have three elements of product cost: material, labor, and expenses. There's nothing else included in the elements of product cost. Yes, these elements, material, labor, and expenses, they're further classified into the other categories as well, which we'll see in the next slide. So as we have seen that we have three elements of product cost: material, labor, and expenses. Now we can further classify material into direct and indirect material, labor into direct and indirect labor, and expenses into direct and indirect expenses. So we have this further classification for elements of cost. Let's see them in detail. So we have direct and indirect material, we have direct and indirect labor, we have direct and indirect expenses. So let's go through direct material first. Direct material is something which is easily identifiable, which is easily traceable, which is the significant or integral part of the product. I have given you the example of a chair. So the wood which is used in a chair, that is an example of direct material, because it is easily identifiable or traceable, and it can be allocated to a single product as well. So direct material is the wood is an example of direct material in a wooden chair. So we can say material which is significant part of a final product or can easily be identified, that is basically known as direct material. The second one is indirect material. So it's opposite to direct material. Anything which is not significant part of a product, or which cannot be easily identified, or which has to be a portion, that is known as indirect material. So material which is not easy to identify or is not an integral part of the product, for example, lubricants or the nails which is used for the chair, that is basically an example of indirect material. Third, we have direct labor. So there are two kinds of labor. The one who is working directly with the product. If I take an example of a wooden chair, the carpenter is an example of direct labor. It's also known as touch labor because it is directly interacting with the product. So carpenter is an example of direct labor, the labor which is working directly on a product. Whereas indirect labor is there for the product, but it is not working directly on the product. For example, the labor supervisor. Now, supervisor is not working directly on the product, but he is there, he is working for the product, so that is considered as indirect labor. Or the manager who is putting mental effort, that is also considered as indirect labor. Or the security staff which is over there, that is also basically indirect labor. So labor working indirectly for a product, that is basically indirect labor. The example can be supervisor, manager, or security personnel. Okay, then we have direct expenses. Direct expenses are those expenses which are connected directly to the product or which can be allocated to the product. You don't have to apportion them. For example, if I hire a machine only for the product, for one particular product, then that is basically the rent of that machine is going to be direct expense, because that machine is not used for the other products, it's used only for that particular product. So that is basically a direct expense. In the same way, if I copy a design, if I take a design from somewhere and I have to pay a royalty for that, that is also a direct expense, because I'm using that design for that particular product. So that is also an example of direct expense. So direct expenses are those expenses which are incurred for a specific product, such as hire of machine for manufacturing of product. Then we have indirect expenses. Indirect expenses are those expenses which cannot be allocated directly to the product. They are normally apportioned. Now, what do I mean by apportionment is that, for example, if we take an example of rent. Now, in a factory building, there will be different products which will be produced. Like, for example, there is a chair which is produced, there is a table, and there are other products as well which are produced over there. Now, the rent is for the whole factory building. It's not only for a particular product. It's not only for chair. It's not only for a table. It's not only for a specific product. It's for the whole building. So that rent has to be apportioned. It cannot be allocated to a single product. It cannot be given to a single product. It has to be apportioned. And when you are going to apportion that, you are going to use a specific base for that. For example, for rent, we use area as a base. So now rent will be divided on the basis of area. So that is basically apportionment. Now rent is not directly connected to one specific product. So it's an indirect expense. In the same way, we have electricity also, which is used over there in the factory building. It's not for one specific product, it's for the whole building. So that is also apportioned using a particular base. It can be kilowatt hour or any other base which can be used to apportion electricity. So indirect expenses are the one which cannot be allocated to a single product, for example, electricity or rent of building. So this is the detail of elements of product cost: direct material, direct labor, indirect labor, direct expenses, indirect expenses. Next, we'll see the manufacturing process. In any manufacturing process, the first thing is that we need an input. Then second, there is work in process, and third, we get an output. So in manufacturing process, we use direct material. Normally we use direct material as an input, and during process, we use direct labor and overheads, and we get finished products as an output. Now, if you see over here, we have included direct material, direct labor, but we don't have indirect material, indirect labor, or indirect expenses. Over here, direct expenses will be also included. If there are any direct expenses, that will be also included in working process. But if we talk about indirect material, indirect labor, and indirect expenses, all of this together